Thank you. All right, all right. So we are going to forego all the bells and whistles because I am not electronically inclined, and I had poor Anthony here for like 20 minutes just trying to figure out how we were going to get him on StreamYard so we could all see him. But welcome to the right questions. I am your host, Ashley Ramos, and with us today we have Anthony Beckman, who is running for, I'm going to let him tell you. So, Anthony, tell us who you are, what you're doing, what office we get to see you run for, and you're gonna win. I have faith in you.
Definitely, I'm definitely going to do that. Anthony Beckman, I'm a police officer. I'm running for 10th District State Senate. Um, we're working hard right now. The campaign is working very hard. We're out every day. We're at the polling places. We're talking to people. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy for our party, and there's a lot of energy for our populist conservative viewpoint and agenda that we have going forward.
Yes, sir. And Anthony is very pro blue. He backs the blue. He was one of the first people to help support me when I started a nonprofit to help the officers. He was there from the very beginning. So, got a lot of respect for this man. He's done some great things and he's going to continue to do good things because I have faith he's going to make it. So, what originally made you decide that you were going to run for office?
Well, like I said, I'm a police officer, and I just see the way the state is going. I see the lawlessness. Obviously, the state has been ruined for years in terms of taxes. We've been losing a lot of people. Small businesses been leaving the state of Illinois. But what really got me is the lawlessness that we've been seeing in the legislators uh, on the other side of the aisle that are not back in the blue. In my district, there's many police officers that live here, and our state senator and state rep, Lindsay LaPointe, do not have the backs of the blue. I mean, during the whole rioting process, I mean, there's been talking about the defunding of the police, and I mean, I don't know, I mean, what kind of people, I mean, think that defunding or dismantling or reallocating money away from the police would be a good thing for civility. But that's one of the major issues, and obviously the high taxes, the businesses that have been closing, the burdensome taxes that have been put on the middle class that is destroying us in Illinois. Since the year 2000, we've lost the most people out of any state in the country, and we're continuing to lose more. And obviously, after the long shutdown that we had, and I mean, we're going to see another shutdown in Cook County. We've seen one in DuPage. We're losing more and more people and more businesses. So I'm here. I'm going to be fighting for the middle class. I'm going to be fighting for law and order and civility.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And so, considering what she is wanting to do, you got a week, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I have faith we're going to see you in office. Now, Lightfoot just talked about if the government basically doesn't just roll over and federally bail her out for the terrible mismanagement of the city and because of Pritzker, the state, that she's willing to fire 615 more officers. So, I mean, if you get in office, what can you do or what do you think should be done to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Well, obviously, we're going to fight for legislation that's not going to allow them to dismantle police officers. I mean, we have in Chicago alone 5,000 short in terms of manpower. How much further are we going to go? And we're seeing in the suburbs, we're seeing in all the municipalities, policing is, I mean, becoming obsolete. There's not people even wanting to take the job. Obviously, that's because of the demonization done by the media and a certain party, the far left, has been demonizing law enforcement for years. But we have to get qualified individuals that still want to take the job. So I'm going to fight for legislation that's going to actually, I mean, fund the police more instead of defunding them. And obviously, if she gets rid of 650 more officers, that would be defunding. I mean, she's done several things in Chicago with specialized units, gang units, drug units to defund the police, and that's only going to hurt the citizens in Chicago. It's not going to help them. When lawlessness occurs, we see what we've been seeing downtown, every area, rioting, looting. I mean, businesses being taken over. Without police, you can't have capitalism. You can't have safe schools. You can't have anything. So if she plans on doing that, it's just going to do harm to the citizens of Chicago.
I agree. Now, would you also be pro? I've talked to a lot of different people, and one of the things that wants to be done is to provide for and make sure that they are wearing on call body cameras. So, would you be willing to be on board with passing legislation that mandates officers have body cameras on and live while they're on call?
Well, I handled this question with the Sun Times interview. First of all, with body cameras, I mean, if you are a police officer, which I am, uh, the body cameras don't always depict everything, the whole situation of an encounter with a regular citizen, an offender, or anybody else. I mean, if we had body cameras that, I mean, were working properly, I would have no problem, just like any officer, I wouldn't have any problem with wearing them. But we have to get it right that the body cameras are going to depict the whole incident or the whole encounter that we have with individuals. Without that, you're only getting half of the narrative. I mean, I would definitely be in favor of that, and I would also say that would have to be dealt with individual departments and municipalities. I mean, not all police departments want them. I mean, I mean, if they do, I would definitely be for it. But like I said, it would have to be, uh, I mean, depicting everything that is going on a particular call. I mean, we just can't have half the incident being shown, which would hurt a police officer. You have to have the whole incident. If we had that, I would definitely be for it. We don't have anything to hide as police officers. We're out there, I mean, trying to do our job. And 99.999% of us go out there every day doing a good job. I mean, protecting the citizens that we work for, the communities that we work for. And it's that 0.0001% that get a bad name. And let's be realistic. There's no profession or job that has 100% good individuals working. I don't care if you're a doctor, lawyer, I mean, nurse, teacher. I mean, every profession, I mean, has one or two bad apples, but that doesn't depict the whole entire police department, which the left and the leftist mainstream media has been trying to do for years.
I agree. You're definitely right on that. Sally Scheller says it's absolutely horrible what Lightfoot's doing. Back the blue. She loves her city. So you've definitely got some fans coming up,
Thank
leaving
you.
their comments.
Thank you very
Now,
much.
what you were talking about accountability, and another thing that has been brought up to me, and I think we've actually kind of touched on it a couple of times at different events that you and I have both been at, is the idea of, instead of defunding the police, if people want to involve social workers, to have specialized social workers that learn to work with police teams for, let's say, the scenario of you get the domestic call, because that's usually the one that everybody brings up as an example. So say you have this domestic call, and in that domestic, there's a husband who's beating up on a wife, and there might be kids there. We don't know the situation. That officer's first a line that he's thinking of doing is diffusing the situation and getting the violent offender out of the situation. But in doing that, he doesn't, it's not fair to ask an officer to diffuse a situation, deal with a violent offender, someone, who's done physical harm or potentially could, and then say that you want him to inspect the house, inspect the situation, look at the kids, see if there's bruises on the kid too, or if it's just the wife. He's dealing with this entity right here. And sometimes, because the police have already been defunded, you don't have two or three or four officers there to be doing this. You know what I mean? It can be very segregal. So the idea is that if we're going to find a happy medium, instead of defunding the police or holding them accountable for things that they can't control because they're already so involved in one aspect of the situation, is to have specialized social workers that are trained to work with these police officers that can go in and assess situations like that to make sure that this guy's not going to get out of jail and he's not going to go kill the wife and kid. So if there were legislation that would have specialized teams of social workers that worked with your officers, do you think that that would help? And is that something you could get on board with?
Well, first of all, I have the utmost respect for social workers. I think social workers play a vital role in our communities. Um, I just don't agree with the fact that a social worker would be coming onto a job with, for instance, a domestic or any call that could particularly go violent because they're not trained in that aspect. And me being a police officer, if I have to watch my own back, I have to watch the offender. Then if I have to watch a social worker who's not trained in firearms or defensive tactics and everything like that, I think it would be actually it wouldn't help the situation at all. Obviously, social workers, before it gets out of hand, cases where child abuse or domestic abuse, to get involved is a great thing. Mental health facilities, I mean, social workers could play a vital role with that. But in terms of when a 911 call is dispatched, and for us to have a social worker alongside of us, I don't know if the situation, I mean, which can get out of control and become dangerous, would be beneficial. I mean, it's, you know, I understand the fact that a social worker would want to talk down somebody, but sometimes individuals are so irate and so out of control. I mean, I don't see how a social worker is going to diffuse that situation more than a police officer would. And obviously, these calls do get out of control. Domestics do get out of control, and the I mean, reasonable force needs to be done to control that situation, or to take control of the offender that's beating up his wife, attacking his child. So I mean, the whole point of that, they're trying to say that, social workers doing the jobs of police officers going out there. You know what? If they're trained in firearms, they're trained in defensive tactics. You know, all in good. But if they're not trained in those aspects, I don't see them being beneficial on a call that could potentially be violent, or a violent call in that nature.
So if they were ever to be involved, they would have to have the kind of same special training that a police officer did, so that they could therein not necessarily be something that the police officer, like you said, would have to worry about. Like it would almost be like a partner rather than like the social worker that we all think of that's like carrying the briefcase with them or something to that effect. But
Ex-
for the most part, you would prefer to let police de-escalate those situations and then social workers do the after work then.
exactly. I mean, if they want to fund the police even more, I mean, instead of talking about the defunding, I mean, let's get more police on the street. And in terms of even defensive tactics training, send police to defensive tactics training. And I mean, every year. I mean, there's officers that have got on the job 18 years and not had one defensive tactics training. If you want to do that, fund the police even more with that. But the whole notion of social workers going on calls, it would not end good. I mean, and if things did out of control, what are we supposed to do? I mean, are we supposed to look after the offender and a social worker at the same time? I think it would be impossible to do. It would actually put more burdensome effects on the police officer to, I mean, to try to deal with, three situations: the victim, the offender. Now we have to worry about a social worker's safety also. I mean, because the main point of us as police officers is worrying about protecting the safety of the people that were around, the citizens, and ourselves. And obviously, as police officers, we protect our I mean, we protect each other. Now we have to protect the social worker. I don't. I mean, you hear politicians talking about that, and I think it's ways to cut funding from the police and to take police off the street. I think that's all it is basically to defund the police and move in a different direction. I don't think a country could last with, if we keep going in that direction where there's no police. If you want to keep taking them off the street and replace them with social workers, lawlessness will never stop. I mean, there's just individuals out there that want to do bad, want to do harm, and in a violent rage. And I mean, there are situations that even decent people, they get caught up in the moment, and things happen. I mean, I don't know if a social worker would be able to handle those issues.
You're absolutely right, and you're getting a lot of agreements over here. Your comments were blowing up, so that you've got a lot of agreement, and I'm very glad that you were able to break that down so that people could understand it. And to add to that, I've talked to first responders, EMTs, and nurses alike, and to your credit, they have agreed that they didn't think it was a good idea, because they said even if they were specially trained, they would not feel comfortable in some of the situations that officers have to walk into. And I've had EMTs that told me that they will not go on certain calls or responses if the police are defunded and they are not there to be with them to diffuse those situations. So you guys have a very important role, and I'm glad that you were able to break that down for us. So to move away from that, because I think you've done an excellent job of the whole backing the blue and what we think about police support with that. Um, because you'll be dealing with people in a different aspect than necessarily just law enforcement, how are you feeling about these COVID restrictions, and what's your opinion on mask mandates?
I definitely agree that there is a virus out there. Okay, I think a lot of blue state governors could have handled this a lot better. You know, I mean, we see North Dakota where there hasn't been as many cases, or other states that handle it differently. I mean, obviously, we have to protect the most vulnerable. We have to protect the elderly that have comorbidities, people that have respiratory diseases, heart conditions, stuff of that nature. They should take precautions. I just overcame leukemia treatment for a year. Um, I was cautious in many regards, but I mean, I didn't go to extremes. I don't feel that we should be shutting down a country. I mean, obviously, like I said, the disease or the virus is out there, but I don't think, uh, even with the CDC readings, that what is it, 99.7% is, so it's 0.003 people have died from this, which we shouldn't be losing any Americans, but we lose people from the flu. We lose people from heart attacks. We lose people from every kind of disease. You know, I mean, gunshot victims, smoking. I mean, people get cancer from smoking. I mean, are we going to shut down every industry and just destroy our country? I mean, we've done a bad job in the state of Illinois. Governor Pritzker did a very bad job of the shutdowns when he looked like a hypocrite when he was out there with protesters that actually turned rioters. I mean, they didn't talk about taking away their First Amendment rights or taking the violence that they were committing, terrorizing police officers, spitting at police officers, throwing bricks. I guess COVID wasn't affected by that, or big businesses that stayed open, or Planned Parenthood centers. You know, I mean, we had cannabis dispensaries that were open, but you know what? Churches, which is our First Amendment rights, freedom of religion, we shut that down. Small mom and pop shops, which probably will never open again, we destroyed those businesses. I mean, if you want to be fair across the board, you got to look at everything. And if people don't really see the hypocrisy by Governor Pritzker and many of the legislators out there were saying shut things down, but only keep a certain portion of things open. You see, you know, I mean, it's hypocrisy. You know, I mean, if you want to be safe, you know, I mean, keep these restaurants open. Do what we've been doing. If there's mass restrictions, people have to go into a restaurant or stay 6 feet apart or every other booth. Let's keep going in that direction. You know, I mean, the numbers aren't rising in Illinois. You know, I mean, they're really not. And the media could fearmonger and do whatever they can, but they're doing that to shut down our businesses. If they want to do that, why don't they shut down everything? I mean, they're not going to do that. So I would say that we keep restaurants, we keep businesses open. You know what I mean? If there is a mask rule, let people go in. If they want to go into restaurants, wear that mask until you get to that table. You know what I mean? Put a cubicle up between booths, space people out, but don't destroy our economy. Don't destroy these small businesses, because you know what? Um, the depression, the opioid addiction, the suicide rate. At the end of the day, we're going to see that it's more harmful to the people than the actual COVID virus. So I would say, you know, I mean, put the restrictions on, but keep everything open. Don't do this, Pritzker. You know, I mean, you're just destroying Illinois. You're destroying the economy. You're pushing us farther and farther into the abyss, which this state cannot go into.
Do you feel that way about the schools as well?
Well, I'm going to tell you, my son's school is open. He goes to a Catholic school. We haven't had any outbreaks there. The schools, they come in every there's a 10-minute start delay. I mean, I think kids should be in school. What we've been seeing, that 16 years and younger are not as affected by this. I mean, there is some cases, you know, I mean, obviously there's going to be something of in terms of any kind of nature. You know, I mean, we have a flu season, people get sick, some people do die, which is sad for anybody to lose their life. But you know, I mean, I would urge schools to stay open if they're already open. And, you know, I mean, kids need to learn. Kids need to be taught in classrooms. Teachers need to be out there. Teachers are a um, a vital point, just like police officers. They are what am I trying to say? Uh, They're like store or firemen, police officers, doctors, and nurses. We need teachers to be teaching in the classroom. We need our kids to be learning. If you shut down schools, you're taking away also mothers and fathers that want to go to a job that are not able to now because they have to stay and do e-learning with their children. So I would suggest that schools should be open. I would urge the CTU to open up the Chicago public school system and get kids in school. Put restrictions on it. You know what I mean? Like I said, my son goes to a Catholic school. They have masks on. Kids get to learn to wear, you know what I mean? They do come accustomed to wearing masks for a full day. It might take a week or two, but put restrictions on and let the kids go to school.
Now, we've had some issues arise when it comes to teachers not wanting parents to be involved with Zoom classes. They don't want them watching their lectures. And I've seen expressions of concern from parents that when the kids go back to school, they'll have even less ability to monitor what their children are learning or how they're being treated when it comes to what they're learning. We had a little boy who was kicked off of a Zoom class because he said that he admired the president, which is terrible. So, would you be in favor of parents having more access to what their children are learning, or if they disagree with what the school or what the teacher is expressly trying to teach their children, that they have a voice as to being able to exempt them from that? And those kinds of subjects are things like U.S. history, because that's been they've talked about putting in the what was it, the 1619,
19
and also,
project.
or yes, and they've also talked about I'll just call it altering the sex education that children are learning and what age they're allowed to teach that. So, as a parent, both of us being parents, are you more in favor of us having more access to what the curriculum holds? And if we object to it, not having to be forced to have our children go through those kinds of classes?
Well, like I said, my son goes to a Catholic school. Okay, I send him to that because I have a problem with the public school system. I don't believe teachers should be teaching ideology. I think they should be teaching the core curriculum. Okay, when they start bringing in political views that the president is bad, police officers are bad, the country is systemically racist, and they don't want to teach the factual history. Me being a history political science major, I have a real problem with this. Our schools do not teach U.S. history. They don't teach uh, the tools what kids are going to need for the future. Okay, many schools teach their ideology, and by the time they get to college, these same kids don't even know who we fought to get our independence in the Revolutionary War. They don't know who we fought in the Vietnam War, and it's sad. I mean, they don't know the simple things in life, how to balance a checkbook. Uh, I mean, civics. We don't have that anymore. And you were talking about sexuality. I don't have a problem with anybody's preference. I mean, I mean, if they're straight, gay, transgender, or anything of that nature, I have no problem with that. But I don't think what we've done in Illinois, what we passed in 2019 is now the history of the LGBTQ. Like I said, I have no problem with anybody's sexuality, but I don't think they should be teaching, I mean, a history of something like that to a 5-year-old when we're not even teaching American history. I don't know what they're going to gain from that, but it's just pushing something on an individual that most parents probably don't even know what is being taught. I mean, obviously lets kids learn as they get older what they want their sexuality to be. You don't have to push it down their throat like they do everything else. And like I said, in the Chicago public school system, we have a lot of teachers teaching ideology. We don't have them teaching, I mean, the core, what they need, the math, the science, the English, the history, what they need to better themselves in the future, or civics classes. They know nothing about the Constitution, these kids, when they get out of high school. By the time they're in college, they're brain dead. I mean, this is not helping. It's sad what the public school system is doing to our kids, and it's even sadder that a lot of these teachers don't want to go back to school. They rather sit at home, be paid, and then many of them that I've heard actually take side jobs of being able to tutor a kid when they're afraid to go into a classroom, but they're not afraid to go into somebody's house and tutor a kid. That's hypocrisy in itself. I mean, we have to hold teachers accountable, just like police officers are held accountable. I mean, I'm held accountable to my actions on a daily basis while I'm working. Teachers are not done the same. They're not held accountable for their actions, and we have to start teaching our kids at a young age, about the core, values about what they're going to do in life. Bring back the technical things that they had in school. Bring back home ec. Bring back uh, trades jobs to show these kids that, I mean, maybe they won't want to go to college, but let's do something that's going to better them in the future so they could get a job, so they could be a value to society instead of, I mean, getting on welfare and thinking somebody owes them something, because that's what schools try to do. I mean, teach kids that they were entitled and owed something when that's not how it is. That's not what our founding fathers envisioned for our country. Our founding fathers envisioned us to obviously learn and be able to handle our own when we become into society, when we become adults into society. And schools are not doing a very good job of that. Parents need to be uh, learning or paying more attention to what their kids are. In this whole 1619 project, it's a joke. I mean, when you want to teach kids that the greatest country to ever exist were the most freedoms and opportunity for every race. I mean, we're in 2020. Everybody has freedoms now. Everybody has a chance to go to school if you just make the most out of it. And you teach them that this country is systemically racist. When we have countries like China, which are really causing human rights violations, there's sweatshops there. They're they go after people that have Christian values or Muslim values. I mean, and they demonize them or torture them. And we glorify that country, but we put down a country that has given so many people the opportunity. Yes, we've done some bad things. I mean, we've come through some hard times with slavery and everything else. But people have to get the facts of slavery did not start in America. Slavery been going on for thousands of years in China, in the Middle East. Slavery has been everywhere. And if people really want to know, the first slaves in America were little Irish boys and girls in the 1600s. The first slave owner in America was an African American man. Okay. So when we want to talk about slavery, let's really look at history. Slavery is bad on all aspects. Slavery still exists today in countries. Human trafficking is a form of slavery, which we don't want to talk about. Okay. Let's stop demonizing this country. Let's start standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, which used to happen in the public school system. I went to a Chicago public school and then I went to a Catholic high school. We used to do that every day. We don't do that anymore. You think they want to teach about 9/11? They don't teach about 9/11. I mean, the school system has to be held accountable because our kids are being poisoned and they're being brainwashed in those institutions.
I agree. And there's a comment here that I wanna say out loud. Someone said life skills, LOL. So you want girls to be taught to cook? No, that means that everybody learns life skills, John Gale. That means that both little boys and little girls learn how to do things that they can sustain themselves with. That means if they need to sew a button on, they can both sew a button on, or they can cook their own, mac and cheese. So that's not very fair, an accurate description of what we're discussing. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to call you out on that. Um,
this has nothing to do with gender. Come on.
no,
I mean, this is, I mean, we need
no.
life skills. Men and women all need life skills. Women are in the same kind of professions as men. This is not a gender thing. Men and women, boys and girls, all have to learn life skills. All have to learn civics. All have to learn how to balance a checkbook. It has nothing to do with gender
Right.
or race or anything else.
One of the things that you kind of started to touch on, and I'm glad that you did, when you started talking about the 1619 project. I will say another inaccuracy that I've heard a lot when it comes to law enforcement is that they said that the first police officers were men who were given a badge and designated to catch slaves, and that's not true. The first policemen were actually created in the northern states, and it was to protect merchants who had things coming over on ships that were getting stolen. So that was where they paid the first police officers, and then it actually just broadened from there in the northern states, and they actually just started patrolling the streets and not just the docks where they were originally hired privately to do. It became something that they did for the public. So I wanted to call that out too. The first policemen were not slave chasers. But actually, when it comes to chasing people, you're an officer, so I'd really like to get your opinion on this topic because it's very hot right now. And that would be I have been to the border, I've been to an ICE facility. I've been to Mexico, and unfortunately, I have bore witness and have family members who bore witness to the atrocities that happen at the border. So, as a police officer who has to kind of deal with the after effects of that, especially being in Chicago where we have a very high immigrant population, how do you feel about the opinion that we should have open borders and deregulate from the border and from ICE?
I'm totally against open borders. I'm totally against sanctuary cities. Uh, every nationality, race, anybody who wants to come here should come here legally. Everybody's welcomed into this country. Just do it the right way. I mean, when we have when we're seeing sanctuary cities that are protecting uh, five-time repeat offenders that have raped, murdered, or everything else, and nothing is being done. I mean, I just had a buddy that was killed, okay, in a motorcycle accident. He was killed by an individual that should have been deported four different times, okay? He had four DUIs, okay? He killed four off-duty officers, okay? That's not acceptable. I mean, I'm totally against sanctuary cities. I'm totally against open borders. Come here legally. This country wants everybody to come. This is a melting pot. Everybody is loved. Every nationality is loved. Every race is loved. That's why this is the greatest country in the world. Just come here legally. Do it the right way. I mean, if you're here on a green card, you're working. I'm sure most people here want to come here for a better life, to I mean, to make a better life for their families and everything else. Just come here legally, and we have to stop protecting in terms of on the law aspect of that, repeat offenders. I mean, I'm not talking about your just your everyday workers or that are coming here for a better life. I'm talking about the violent criminals who are coming here, the cartel members, the MS-13, the offenders that sanctuary cities are protecting. I mean, ICE can't even work with local municipalities when they have somebody. I mean, or when we have somebody, it's vice versa. You can't work with joint agencies for this because of the sanctuary city policies. I mean, we have to start holding all the criminals accountable. I mean, nobody is above the law, and people that are trying to get here legally and commit crimes, they shouldn't be above the law either. And I mean, in many Democrat cities like Chicago, New York, LA, I mean, we're protecting them. No criminal should be protected. I'm a person of the rule of law where everybody should be held accountable. That's citizens, politicians, police officers, and illegal aliens should be held accountable too if they're committing crimes. That should be a no-brainer to everybody.
Yes, and I would like to also add to this with what you're saying as a Hispanic woman whose family did come here legally. I can say that I have done my research, and a majority of the Hispanic community now, we're actually 67% of us are native born, which means we were born here. So there's a very small percentage of legal Hispanic citizens that are here. Most of us were born here, and I feel like it's not fair to us as a culture, as a heritage, that we've been kind of displayed by the left as kind of like the new poster child for demonization. Like we're all supposed to be these people who just swam across the Rio and can't speak English, and we need the help of the left. And I would really like to call out that that is indeed not true, because like I said, 67% of us were born here, and over 80% of us speak English fluently and have educations. So just keep that in mind, everybody.
No,
You
I
talked to
totally agree with that. I mean, but what the left does is they try to put everybody against each other. They try division, they try to divide. That's nothing new. I mean, they've been doing that for years, and they're still trying to do that to put people against people, law-abiding citizens against, or people that don't like the police with people that are supportive of the police. They divide people in different groups. That's the only way they try to keep control, because what their policies in their agenda, and they have no facts to go along with it. That's the only way they could do things. So yeah, I totally agree with you on everything you just said.
You just said a good word. Policy. Gun policy is a big one right now, especially because gun sales in Illinois have gone up over 300%, but we have had no mass shootings. violence in suburbia has not gone up, although the sound of gunshots being like called in, people saying they've heard gunshots have gone up. But a majority of the violence that we've seen has actually still been in the city. It has not been with police officer engagement. It's actually been in minority communities where we have seen that go up. And the ones that they are catching, they're not legally obtained guns a majority of the time. So considering all of that and this push for more gun mandates, would you stand against that, considering the fact that we're now seeing that the the truth is that guns aren't the problem, it's people using the guns? So would you still stand to make sure that we kept our Second Amendment rights?
Well, I'm going to protect the Second Amendment 100%. Okay. And like you said, it's not the decent individuals that are legal gun holders that have their carrying concealed, that have FOID cards, that are committing the crimes. Let's be realistic. It's our criminal justice system. Okay. It's Kim Foxx letting repeat gun offenders out of jail. Okay. That's why we need to elect Pat O'Brien. Okay. We have a lawless state's attorney that demonizes police officers, but lets repeated gun offenders, gangbangers, drug dealers, rapists, murderers out of jail. Okay, those are the ones that have to be held accountable. It's not the decent citizens, and that's what the left tries to use to take away the guns, because they know that the criminals, the gangbangers, are still going to be able to obtain their guns on the black market. It's the decent people that are using their Second Amendment rights to protect their house, their family, and their property, that are not crazy lunatics, that are not going around shooting people, but are just want their Second Amendment rights, their constitutional rights. Okay, so it's not those individuals. So the left could try taking away everybody's guns, but that would not do anything to stop crime. The bad guys are going to have the guns, and trying to disarm officers in the future, or if that's what they're working towards, that's not going to help society. That's not going to help the decent people. Lawlessness will continue. Bad people will be able to still get guns. You know, I mean, you just like the war on drugs that we have. You could try taking all the drugs off the street. People are still going to get drugs. I mean, it's total hypocrisy. Illinois is one of the highest gun restrictions. Look at our carry and conceal. Most places you can't go to, you can't even use your carry and conceal. Everything that you go to, it doesn't allow guns to be in there. I mean, and you're still seeing crime in Chicago. Look at the red states that you see, that there's less restrictions, open carry. You see less crime. You see decent people being able to carry guns, which is a lot of times a deterrence. You know what I mean? When you have an offender there, when you know that somebody is armed, maybe it's a deterrence not to try robbing them, not to try burglarizing their house. We have way too many restrictions in Illinois. And I'm not saying for felons or people that have mental health issues, they should not be carrying guns. And the 72-hour policy that it takes to get your gun after it, I'm totally for that. But if you're going to keep putting more and more restrictions to lessen our Second Amendment rights, I totally disagree with all that, and I would fight any legislation in terms of that. I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment, uh, and that's a big thing with Illinois politicians.
Mhm. Terry Orcutt says, I have an old saying, guns don't kill people, people kill people. I think we
Totally
can
agree.
all agree.
Totally
Um,
agree.
so would because you brought up the violence, and we kind of talked a little bit about the riots. So here's the thing. We have heard multiple times from Lightfoot and Governor Pritzker that they want to raise taxes to pay for the deficits. Would you stand against legislation that's going to make your district and the rest of Illinois pay for the damages that they've allowed to happen in the city of Chicago?
Yes, I'm totally against it. I don't think you should be raising taxes on people and businesses, because what's going to happen is more people are going to leave the city, more people are going to leave the state, and if you keep raising taxes on businesses, they're going to shut down. We're going to have more empty storefronts. We're going to have more unemployed people, and we're going to have more people on government aid or getting or getting yeah, some kind of government aid. I totally disagree. We need a bigger tax base in Illinois. We need to start bringing back more jobs. We got to start lessening and lowering the taxes so we could bring more people back into Illinois. And whatever they did, if they used it as a chance to get a bailout from the federal government, which I hope President Trump never does. I hope he does not bail out any of these states that allow lawlessness to occur. during this time of pandemic when they were shutting down businesses, but they allowed them to riot. They handcuffed police officers. I don't know what their initiative was on this or their total agenda, but I disagree with raising taxes on the people of Chicago and the people in the state of Illinois.
I'm sure we all have
All
our theories.
together.
So, would you be agreeable to a freeze on any sort of raises for government officials until we can balance the books?
Totally. Politicians shouldn't begin to raise. I mean, if I make it to the state senate, I wouldn't want to raise. I wouldn't be taking a second pension. I mean, I think the legislators are hypocrites that think they should begin to raise in terms of this when when they haven't even been in session for months. So it's okay for them to get a raise with other people in other jobs not even working. I mean, some of them out of work, but they should begin extra money and extra pay. No, government workers should not begin any kind of raises.
What about term limits?
Totally for term limits. I think you get in, you go, you fight for your agenda, you fight what got you elected. You don't lie to the people. You stand strong on your agenda and you fight for those things, and then you get the hell out. You get in and you get out, and you let somebody with new, fresh ideas to come fight the same kind of good fight, and that's the fight for the middle class.
Limits on pages of legislation. There's a lot of push by people to make sure that legislation doesn't just get filled. I was talking with Jesus about this earlier. You could have a bill and it might be called, save the puppies, but it's not just saving the puppies. It might say save the puppies on top, but inside you might be killing every cat. We have a lot of that. So would you be in favor of making it so that a piece of legislation that was being voted on had to be 100 pages or less so that things like that could not happen and just starts and keep sliding by without the notice of the people?
I would definitely say yes to that, and I definitely think that we have to start being more transparent with the voters on the laws that we are passing, because a lot of stuff that's passed in Illinois, it's passed without any knowledge of the voters and our constituents. Because I talk to a lot of people on a lot of the voters out there. They say they don't know half the laws, or even more than half the laws that are being passed, because we're not transparent. We're not transparent with anything, just like this whole progressive income tax. The Pritzker and my opponent, Robert Martwick, who orchestrated and wrote this amendment, has not been transparent with the voters. They try to push things through and push things down people's throat without being transparent. We have to start being transparent with everything that we're doing. And the state of Illinois definitely hasn't been transparent with anything for many years.
Would you be willing to, and would you be in favor of any of Congress having to publicly post which way they are voting on legislated legislation so that they can be held accountable if they vote against or for things that
Def-
are, beneficial to the citizens?
Definitely. Like I said, we should be transparent. Our voters should know how we vote. I'm all for that. What I say in terms of my agenda, that's what I'll be fighting for legislation in Springfield. I have no problem. I don't care what the constituency is. I never flip flop, and I always stick to my point. So I'd be total in favor of the voters and the residents in Illinois seeing what the politicians, what their state legislators and state senators are actually voting on. I mean, we should have transparency, because too many people are blinded by the corruption and the lies that politicians in Springfield are saying. And this swamp in Illinois is much deeper than the swamp in Washington. I can tell you that. It's known for corruption, and it continues, and it has to be changed, and it has to be stopped. And the people, our voters, have to become more aware of what the politicians are actually doing. Totally agree with that.
Awesome. Anthony, I appreciate you so much for answering my questions tonight and answering, some of the things that we've had on here. And you, like I said, you've had a lot of different comments. And one of them that I want to point out to you is that you had someone say, congratulations for beating cancer. Definitely had a lot of thumbs up for that. So we're all very blessed and glad that you're here. If you could say, any last words to the people who are going to see this video and, want to know about you, or if you want to tell them where they can find out more, to respond with you, please, by all means, take this opportunity to do so.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the listeners that are out there, and really thank you to the fact that there was some individual saying that I beat cancer. Thank you very much for that, and God bless you. Um, I'm getting into this. to fight for the people, not for myself, not for the hedge funds, which I don't have any. I'm going in there as a fighter for the people. And the 11 months that I fought cancer, I'm going to do the same when I get down to Springfield. Everything that I run on is going to be what I'm fighting for, small government. And I have no problem with talking about the small government that I'm for, lowering taxes across the board, lowering property taxes. I'm for the people. I'm not for the politicians. I don't consider myself a politician. And take a look at me, and who's ever in my district, I hope you vote for me. I'm in this 10th district state senate, which encompasses the 41st ward, the 45th ward, 39th ward, part of the 29th ward, many in the northwest side suburbs, Norwich, Harwood Heights, Schiller Park, parts of Park Ridge, Des Plaines, Franklin Park, Elmwood Park. It's a very big district. Just take a look at me. I'm a fighter for the people, and thank you very much to the listeners, and God bless you.
Yes, sir. Oh, do you have a website or a Facebook page?
Yeah, so I have a Facebook page, and I'm also, you could take a look at me at the Northwest Side GOP. That's nwsgop.com. My whole bio's in there, and I do also have a Facebook page and a Senate page.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody go ahead and check that out. Again, thank you so much, Anthony, for being here with us. And I'll definitely be getting to some of the comments that I see to you guys too. Everybody be blessed, be safe, and have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.